Hello, hello, hello. It's Mark Atwood here, the Mark Atwood Show, Adventures in a Cosmic Suit. It's Saturday, 6th of July, 12 minutes past 5 as I'm recording this. And Britain has a new Prime Minister. Isn't that nice? What do I think about that? Well, if you go to my Substack, Diary of a Conspiracy Theorist.substack.com, I'm going to write some stuff there. I have been talking about the election a little bit recently. It is all part of a movie. That's what we're seeing. And unfortunately, Britain has been run by satanic pedivores for so fucking long that it's taken a huge amount of waking up. And I think Keir Starmer's part of that. So look out for WEF shenanigans in the coming months. But we haven't got long before November the 5th. And I think something has to happen between now and then. But I don't do dates. And I'm just trying to live in the present moment. Now, part of that is staying sane through the madness of the last 4 years in particular. Now, through most of my life, one of the ways that I used to stay sane, especially on a Saturday evening, was to sit and watch a little TV show from England called Doctor Who. But it was actually created by a Canadian called Sidney Newman in 1963, when he gave a young female producer called Verity Lambert the job of creating this crazy idea about a man and his granddaughter in a what we call a police box in the UK. They used to be everywhere across Britain. They were like little blue sheds that had spades and stuff in for policemen, back when policemen were policemen and looked after the community. And that little blue box could travel in time and space because it could go anywhere. And it was first shown on the 23rd of November 1963, but it had to get shown again the following week because there was the unfortunate incident of George H.W. Bush murdering President JFK. Did I say that out loud? I think I did. And this show is the longest running science fiction TV series in the world. And it got cancelled in, I think it was 1989, resurrected a little bit with a guy called Paul McGann, then died again, then came back in 2005, brought back by a man called Russell T. Davies. Now, regular viewers of this show will know I don't talk about science fiction or culture as much as I'd like to, although I do have a long, long history with this particular show, Doctor Who, because what's going on with Doctor Who is indicative of what's going on in culture everywhere, because it has been stolen from the fans and used in such a horrific way to shoehorn unbelievable agendas into the minds of children, especially. That's my big bugbear with it, which is why I wanted to talk about it today. My history with it goes back, if you are a Doctor Who fan and you remember Sylvester McCoy, go and look up the 7th Doctor Handbook and you'll see my name in that book a few times. There was also a show that I directed called Moths Ain't My Doctor Who Scarf. Directed and produced that. I went to the Edinburgh Festival, then toured for years all over the world, got turned into a BBC play. And then there was a sequel called My Stepson Stole My Sonic Screwdriver. This was with my friend Toby Haydock, who's a comedian that you can find regularly in Manchester, in England. And that toured for 7 years. That actually got me into the West End. It got to the West End, which means I'm accidentally a West End director. But enough about me and Doctor Who. One of the things that keeps me sane is going, and there's two things that I watch when I want to chill out, apart from movies, although there's a massive paucity of movies that I want to watch anymore, because once you see the symbolism, you can't sort of unsee it. But that is still a reason why I do go, to be honest. I did do a few reviews like on the Batman film a few years ago, but I haven't done as much as I'd like to. But there are people out there that are doing amazing work. There are a number of people that I like to go and look at, like the Critical Drinker. I don't know if you've seen him. He's brilliant, Scottish chap who does amazing reviews. And there's also Nerdrotic, who's also one of my favorite channels. But there's another guy from Canada that has me in stitches and helps me feel far less painful about what's going on with this stuff. I'm just going to share a little bit of what I'm talking about so that you can see what I mean. So this is a channel on YouTube called Bowlestrek, and here's just a sample of one of his reviews of the recent Doctor Who.
And now we've come to the end of what will hopefully be known as the final end of this franchise that has been pillaged and beaten to death for the past 7 years. Oh, what a spectacle it's been. And I don't think we've ever witnessed quite the fall from grace like the fall of Russell, the pompous twit. Who would have thought that the dude that brought the show back 20 years ago would be the same person that would oversee its eventual destruction and somehow manage to make something that was even worse than the dreck created during the reign of Chibs the Idiot? We start with Dr. Nutty running.
So yeah, it is just gonna make StreamYard's working here. So it is my pleasure to welcome the angry Canadian Bowlestrek. Hello, sir.
Hello. How are we doing today?
Well, that intro went on a bit longer than I expected, but when I start talking about Doctor Who, there's a lot to talk about, isn't there?
Oh yeah, it's all good, and then about 7 years ago, it becomes all bad. That's my quick summation.
That's very well put, and I was thinking that before we started this show, that I gave up on it when Jodie Whittaker. Well, I actually gave up on it in Capaldi's last season because it was like, I'm a lesbian, by the way. Did you know I'm a lesbian? Every episode, it was just mind-blowingly. And I couldn't believe Stephen Moffat got talked into doing that.
My view is his hand had been forced by the BBC. If you look at Moffat's first 4 seasons, 3 with Matt Smith, the first one with Peter Capaldi, the sort of, I'll call it bile that started in Capaldi's second season wasn't really there. And at the time, if you were watching what the BBC was doing, especially with the diversity and inclusion strategy, which was released in 2016, and if you watched a horrific spinoff called Class, which I think to this day might still be the worst thing related to the show that's ever been released. But yeah, and my view is, I think there were 2 reasons. One, Moffat was getting attacked for being a sexist and all the other ists and phobes and everything else, because this is around 2013, 2014 when this was starting to become, what it is now. So I think part of it was Moffat trying to prove that it wasn't these things, but I think more than anything else, it was the BBC. If you look at Moffat's first 4 seasons, even the style, the tone, everything is completely gone by his final 2. And you could tell that he was checked out. And I was one of the few people that clued into where this was going even before Jodie Whittaker had been cast as the Doctor. Capaldi's 3rd and final season is actually the first season, well, until what followed, that I haven't watched since it was originally broadcast. I was reviewing it at the time. I've tried to rewatch, I think, the first episode. I made it halfway through. My main focus, say 15 years ago, was talking about Doctor Who DVDs and Blu-rays. It was the final full season I bought on Blu-ray. It was in the shrink wrap for like 2 years. Then somebody said, well, why don't you try watching the pilot? Is it as bad as you? Yeah, it's actually worse than I remembered it being. But there's a definite turning point with Doctor Who around 2015, and same thing goes with culture generally. That's when I date the beginning of the end of popular culture, at least in terms of television and film, to around February, March 2015, when we got the announcement of Ghostbusters 2016, which is generally called Patient Zero. So it was around then that everything starts to unravel. I primarily cover Doctor Who, but I've covered the destruction of Star Wars until I canceled Disney Plus about 2 years ago. I have no interest in watching it. I'll let Gary and Drinker and everybody else tear that apart. Disparu, his reviews are awesome if you guys haven't checked them out.
Yeah, they're incredible, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah.
I would say that things took a turn in 2015. I was the only person in 2017 when Whittaker was cast as the Doctor warning people about where this was going to go. I had been following it. I had seen Class. I had read the inclusion strategy released the year prior. I knew where it was going to go. I became the most hated person in Doctor Who fandom because of it, and I didn't care. My view was, if I'm going to follow everybody else and try and hang out with the cool kids and say this is great, then I might as well quit YouTube. So I didn't do that. I wasn't yelling in videos back then, but I was calling out what I was seeing and what was likely to come. 4 episodes in, I was proven right, but still became the most hated person in Doctor Who fandom when Russell T Davies was announced as coming back. Exact same situation. I warned people, this isn't going to be what you think it is. Russell is not the same person he was 10 years ago. And, well, more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago at that point, or 15, 16 years. He's not the same person he was. This is going to end very badly. Same thing, the internet, aside from maybe a few other content creators, piled on me. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to say this is the best thing ever. Again, I was proven right last time. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to be proven right this time. There were multiple live streams made calling me ists and phobes. And then we saw season 1/series 14. And once again, I was proven right. So I just say what I think. And if people don't like it, I kind of don't care.
Well, I know you can. They can suck it, is what you like to say.
That was the change, that because I left YouTube for about a year and a half.
I know you did. I used to look for you, and I was like, "Where's he gone?"
No, it was around 2022. Because I've been on YouTube since 2007, so I've been doing this for this September will be 17 years.
Yeah.
But I was tired of fighting with the idiots. This is again when I was calling out what I was going to see with RTD, and I'm like, you know what? This is just making me miserable. So I'm going to leave. I don't know if I'll be back. I wanted to rebrand my my channel into a horror review channel, which I actually had 5 videos ready to go. And then I realized, well, no, actually, because my main interest now that Doctor Who and Star Trek and everything else is effectively dead, is classic horror. And I decided I'm not going to do that. This is my escape. I don't want to bring this into YouTube. Then after about a year and a half, I came back. And when I came back at this point, I didn't care anymore. I was just, to use what the British say, I'm just going to take the piss out of this because I have no investment. I don't care about saving it anymore. I don't care about exposing it anymore because we all know what caused this. Several of us covered it for years. So my up until last fall, my sign off had always been, thank you for watching and have a great day. I'm like, there's nothing great day about this. This is all pathetic. And YouTube hasn't caught on to that yet, mainly because it's at the end of my video. But yeah, YouTube hates me, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah, well, they hate me. I lost 90,000 subscribers on YouTube in the last 2 years, but that's a badge of honor, actually, in this day and age. Now, I know I've focused on Doctor Who at the beginning of this, but like you, I have great affection for things like Star Trek and Star Wars in my childhood as well. And as you touched upon, they've been utterly destroyed, with maybe the exception of Picard season 3. Which was quite good, I thought, but that's another story.
Oh, it was brilliant. It was the one sort of oddity. The one, well, it was done by somebody who cared about the franchise, who knew what the hell he was doing, for one thing. But yeah, that's like the one outlier in the past decade.
I know, it's shocking, isn't it? And it's been, and the reason why I wanted you to come on this show, although my audience aren't necessarily science fiction fans, they do know that we're in a war of good versus evil. And I think that war shows its face very much so in popular culture. And commentators like you and the other guys that we've mentioned, I think, are incredibly important at this time in the fight back. And the other thing is that you mentioned yourself being the most hated man in fandom. That, I've watched from the sidelines and had similar attacks on myself that you've put up with, and that isn't easy. And getting back up and trying to make something relevant, and it's such an important thing. And I just want to thank you for your work, because we're up against $1 trillion propaganda machine that is brainwashing people minute by minute basis. We have to fight back, don't we?
Yep. And when it first happened, I was a bit taken aback. It was like I said, I'd been doing YouTube. This was 2017. I'd been doing YouTube for 10 years. Small channel, averaging about 1,000 subs. I was perfectly happy doing that. And it was one video called "Is Doctor Who a PR Disaster?" which about 3 weeks after I published it, it went viral. Somehow was picked up by the algorithm, and that was, and I remember it clearly because it was picked up in a matter of hours. I was it was a Sunday. I was working at the job I had at the time, and I used to get notifications whenever I on my smartphone, whenever I got a comment or whenever I got a new subscriber, and just all of a sudden my phone just starts going off. I'm like, what the hell? So I look, I'm like, oh, these are I'm put it up. I'm getting death threats. I'm being called every name under the sun. There were also people that agreed with me. It was about 50% normal people and 50% lunatics. So I think that was the only time it really, was taken aback. I'm like, oh, wow, I've never had death threats before, and I've had 3 in the past hour. But after a while, you just learn to tune it out. And actually, now I just laugh at it. I kind of encourage it, and I do tend to rile them up on YouTube and, well, Twitter. And apparently there was a bingo game made about me this year, and that was not a flattering bingo game, so we had a good laugh about that. But anybody who's doing, like, I know Gary, I know Drinker personally, I've known these guys for years. There comes a point where you don't care anymore. It's like, okay, been there, done that. I'm like, there's another attack video. Well, yeah, there's like at least 100 of them live right now. I don't care. We'll just make fun of it.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing else you can do. So, in terms of the broader picture, it's worth explaining to my audience who might not understand what science fiction fandom and Doctor Who fandom was like before all of this happened, because it was a lovely place to be, wasn't it?
It was, but I've been a part of online fandom since about 95, so the birth of the internet. So in the 90s, I was an obsessive Doctor Who fan. I was an obsessive X-Files fan. I was an obsessive Star Trek fan. There was one thing which it was a smaller contingent, but it was there even in the 90s, which is part of the problem. Like there's many issues with the show and many reasons that it's gotten into its current state. But there was always what I would call an elitist faction in Doctor Who fandom going back decades.
Yeah.
It was there in 95. It eventually completely took over. And I've talked about this in live streams. I think maybe the difference between, say, Star Trek and the X-Files is they're American productions. Doctor Who is a British production. I don't know, maybe culturally it comes out of the class system. I have no idea, because that was never really a thing over here. But there was like the chosen fans. And I won't mention names, but we probably know who a lot of these people were, who were given access to the stars that were on the show. Also those involved with the show, where it's like, these are the elitist fans, and the rest of you are the plebs. And you just follow what we do. So there was that element, but outside of that, it was, at least talking to the normal people, it was a great fandom to be a part of. And I'd say out of the 3 of them over the course of my life, I think I've probably been obsessed with Doctor Who fandom and Doctor Who the most up until, well, about 7 years ago. But in terms of fandom, like, there were forums, I won't mention them by name. I think I'm banned from all of them now.
Gallifrey 1. That's just come to mind. I mean, I've not been on that for 10 years. I used to go on it every day.
It used to be, was it Outpost Gallifrey?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Which closed down in 2009. But I used to spend hours every day on that forum. It was I loved it.
I do.
It's we'd be speculating about what DVD is going to come out next. We'd be talking about the show, not in the way we do now, where you're calling people names. We're speculating about plot lines. It was, and there were some other threads in there non-related. I think they even had a Star Trek thread at one point, so I would go into there. But it was a great fandom to be a part of, and it was the best time for Doctor Who to be a Doctor Who fan. I would say between about 2005 and maybe 2011, because there was so much. You had the show come out, what we'll call RTD Part 1, which is good RTD. So you had
Mhm.
the show, which was absolutely on fire.
Mhm.
You had Big Finish, which was at that point still on fire. They went the way of the main show as well. But you had Big Finish releasing audiobooks primarily of the first, Cullen Baker, Peter Davison, Sylvester McCoy, and continuing Paul McGann. They've done a whole run of Paul McGann over the past 25 years now, I think it's been roughly. And also we had the DVDs coming out. So we were reliving the classic series at the same time. And I think when I look at all my years in fandom, whether it be Star Trek, whether it be horror, whether it be X-Files, I think the most fun I've ever had, and the period that I'm most fondly remember, is Doctor Who 2005 to 2011. Now, of course, fandom is completely different. That elitist contingent that I was talking about completely took over. And it was more or less about fitting in with each other than anything to do with the show, which is why you'll notice everything related to the franchise, every forum, every even if you look at the special features that they were doing at the time with the DVDs, people behind the production, anybody involved in the production at any level, people that had been involved with the show previously, all started towing the line at the same time. Big Finish probably for a while actually outdid what was going on TV in terms of the wokeness stuff. For those of you who don't know, Big Finish has been doing audio adventures of Doctor Who since they've had the license since 1999. They've been around since 98.
Yeah.
And we noticed this, and I'm like, this is that contingent that I was talking about way back in the 90s. They've completely taken over, and anybody that didn't toe the line was completely ostracized. So Doctor Who has gone from being one of the best fandoms to be involved in to, I'd say it's the worst. Star Trek has bad elements. Star Wars has bad elements, but Doctor Who is the worst. I've seen people have all-out breakdowns just for criticizing a TV show. This contingent, they are vile. They will destroy your life. There's people been doxxed. There's been worse things happening, which I won't mention on here. It's unreal how it went from one to the other, and all those nice fans that we used to deal with, they've either left on their own recognizance or they've been kicked out of fandom. If you want, it's say 50 years from now, if you want to do a sociological study on the destruction of fandom, Doctor Who, I think, is the best example. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this in entertainment where something has turned so completely. And Doctor Who used to mean one thing. It was, the guy in the curly hair in the police box is what most people over here thought. Now they just know, oh yeah, they replaced it with a woman, then the show became horrible.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So that's where we are right now. Just the most toxic fandom, and now it's come back to bite them in the ass because the show is done. You had Russell T Davies, you had David Tennant, you had the entire production team from what was considered the golden age of Doctor Who. They did what they did. That was their one shot to save the show.
Yeah, and they could have done. They could have rewritten The Timeless Child. They could have done anything they wanted, and they went in exactly the wrong direction.
Yep. And they did what they did, and now Doctor Who is now I kind of categorize shows into shows that I think could potentially be saved and franchises that can't. I think both Doctor Who and Star Wars are now completely beyond saving for similar but also different reasons. I think Marvel and Star Trek have the potential to be saved after a long break. Marvel because it's big enough where there's, the universe is big enough. You have enough characters where after a break, you can probably bring it back. Star Trek was redeemed with Picard season 3, where we say, okay, there's still steam in that. Please jettison all this other crap and give us something like that. Let Terry Matalas run the show. Of course, instead, they're going in a completely different direction, which actually sounds worse.
Yeah, well, as a commentator, there's a lot I can talk about, but as a dad, what I'm really pissed off about is that it was the one show all of my kids, I've got 5 kids, we would all sit and watch it. And when it came back in 2005, I was over the moon, and it came back really, really well. I'm just explaining this to the audience for a show that a lot of people had written off many times. I was very similar to Bowlestrek. I remember in '96 when the Paul McGann movie came out, I spent 7 hours downloading a 30-second trailer because the internet was all on dial-up.
I remember that trailer. I saw it in the theater.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was so exciting. I think I queued up in the streets to buy the video of that when it came out as well at midnight at HMV in Manchester with a long scarf on. I'm giving away all my geeky secrets here. But there was a time in, I think it was about 2005 or 6, it must have been 2006, where strangely Rob Shearman stayed at my house one night. And for those that don't know, Rob wrote the episode Dalek in the first season with Christopher Eccleston. And it was a triumphant comeback for these characters. And I was going to say that in the introduction, that really the series wouldn't be where it was without the Daleks. And they really like an allegory for the Nazis, and written by a guy called Terry Nation in 1963 originally. And they become part of British culture. They have survived 50, 60 years of being lambasted and people taking the piss out of them because they came back really strongly. And I said and Rob wouldn't tell me everything that was going on, but he said, I got a very distinct feeling that him and a couple of the other writers were given a shot, but then ousted, and we never saw them again. And they were phenomenal writers. And so there were signs that I, looking in from the outside, I could see, but I was still absolutely because I'm an optimist naturally. And when I saw Russell T Davies coming back, and I always thought this is going to be brilliant. They're going to rewrite it. What an opportunity. But just to explain this to the viewers who don't necessarily watch it, this had the potential to be the biggest TV show on the planet, and it was massive for a number of years when David Tennant was at the helm.
Yeah,
I'm talking about a show that actually got watched in the States is what I'm talking about. Canadians and Australians have watched it for quite a long time, but in the States it never really got past PBS. But it did break through, and you think an organization. I mean, I slag off the BBC all the time. I hate the BBC. With a passion, and I think the building should be burnt down and all those idiots taken out of it. But the timing of bringing it onto Disney, having a massive budget, and then committing what is essentially commercial suicide, that's a head melter, just from a commercial point of view, isn't it?
My theory, well, it's not even a theory. I think it's out there for everyone to see. The creatives behind these shows, it's all about ego. In many cases, I don't even think they actually care about many of the causes they are speaking of. You've got that BBC bubble and you have the Hollywood bubble. I think they're very similar, completely out of touch with everyone else. And now it's just driven by ego and a narcissistic sense of superiority. These people want to prove they are better than everyone else, and this is how they've chosen to do it. And at this point, especially Disney, you had Doctor Who and The Acolyte on at the same time. The worst thing ever produced by either of those franchises. How could any sane person, especially The Acolyte, say this is going to be a massive success, this is going to bring in tons of money? No, it's turned you into a complete mockery. And it's really sad to see what's happened to the BBC, because I've always viewed it as an outsider. And in Canada and the US, up until about 2014, 2015, for entertainment, the BBC was always seen as the gold standard. Terms of documentaries, in terms of TV shows, like all my favorite TV shows of all time are BBC: Keeping Up Appearances, One Foot in the Grave, Waiting for God. Mm-hmm. I've got a whole section of BBC TV DVDs over on my shelf. It was the gold standard. Yeah, before it went off the deep end, I used to go to the pirate seas and acquire Panorama every week. Well, whenever they would air a new episode, I think it was like every few months or whatever. And then it went off the deep end. the BBC that we knew doesn't exist anymore. What I see that corporation now in name only doesn't correlate at all to what I've seen in the past. Everything that I used to watch up until around 2014, 2015 was British. I couldn't stand over here. It's, mainly American sitcoms, Canadian sitcoms, or even worse. I would acquire, because you couldn't get them over here, dozens of British sitcoms. Now, everything it's just unwatchable.
Yeah.
But there's the silver lining, if it ever comes, is although it will take a while for Disney because they still have deep pockets. My hope, and I've been saying this since 2019, is keep doing it so your industry will completely collapse and go back to independent filmmaking. There's always going to be a market for entertainment. Nobody wants to watch your crap. Most of these companies are in serious financial trouble right now, and it's going to get worse because the economy of practically every Western country is about to implode. People won't be able to afford to buy your crap. Like I canceled Disney Plus 2 years ago. Haven't missed it for a second. Netflix, they always have something that I want, but it's mostly crap. The other ones I don't bother with anymore. So I'm rooting for the end of these studios, and I want to go back to just independent media because there's always going to be a market.
Absolutely, and one of the good things is the rising of the commentators and the talent and people are starting to get organized and say, well, fuck that, we're going to go and do our own thing, because they're just not listening at all. But just put it into context. I don't know how you've sat through every episode. I've watched a couple of the reviews from that chap you just mentioned, Disparu, is it? I can't remember how do you say his name.
Disparu.
Disparu. Yeah, I have. He's so good at that, but it's like watching an episode itself. So I actually find it, even though he's brilliant, I find it difficult to watch it because I don't actually want to know anything about it. But you've actually sat through this season, and we're talking about, just put it into context, in the UK, David Tennant at his height would be getting 14 million viewers. I think one of the Christmas specials got.
Voyage of the Damned, 14 million,
Yeah.
I believe is still the record, and will remain as the record at this point. Even Jodie Whittaker got 11 million during her debut episode.
That was just us given, I was one of those 11 million thinking, couldn't not watch it,
Yep.
At that point, you couldn't not watch it, hoping they'd do something good with it, because they were successful in changing the sex of the master, so maybe they could do it. But oh my god, how terrible was that? Lost my thread now. The size of the audience for the recent series is like 2.5 million. It's nothing.
It's down to, I'd say, the core obsessive Doctor Who fans who desperately want to see the show get better. And you read comments, not even on my videos, but to news stories, anything else, other people's videos. There's still a contingent that desperately want the show to get better. A lot of them were pushed away this year, but there's still some that are hanging on. I think a small contingent of the people that they are pandering to, and this mysterious new audience that everybody is pursuing, there is a small element of that, but I think even those aren't watching it. There are people that are watching it in utter disbelief. But Mike, I spent 8 to 10 hours with every episode. It was, and I've been doing these style of videos since about 2018 for my reviews. Probably the more entertaining ones are the ones that I had more fun making, were probably Batwoman, because that show was so absurd. But it's I'll watch the episode usually with my jaw dropped. Then I'll go back, I'll write my script, go through the whole episode again. Then there's editing the script, recording the script. Then I have to go sit with the episode a third time to get screen clips. So by the end, it's and I've been doing that. I've never, after I finished the video, I haven't rewatched a single episode of Doctor Who since 2018, because I just don't want to experience this again. if you asked me half of what happened in the Whitaker era, I couldn't tell you because I blocked it out. I didn't cover her last 3 specials because after Flux, I'm like, I'm done. It's I like watching the long form videos. I think it's just sort of the style that I've gotten. But I know Disparu, if you want entertainment, watch his breakdown of the Robin Hood series.
I will.
He did the same thing of every episode. It was a travesty that was filmed in Canada. But his reviews of those episodes are probably amongst the funniest things I've ever seen on YouTube.
Well, that's the thing. The reviews are better than the shows, which is a bit of a sad state of affairs. Yeah, I will go and watch Disparu, guys, if you're watching this. And I'll put a link to him below as well because he's really worth. If you want a bit of entertainment, he's the best review I've seen in a very, very long time. But I was going to play you a video actually, Bowlestrek, and I think I'm just thinking whether I should play the video first or ask the question later. I think I'll play the video first. Let's just have a little look at something. You don't know I'm going to play this, so I'm just going to see what you think to this.
Okay.
With the slogan, I attract the ire of the occasional online idiot. But I don't have social media, so even I have to be told about that by my brilliant wife, Georgia, who is the real engine behind anything we do. She educates me about empathy and understanding, and she has been a huge educator for me. But I suppose if I'm honest, I'm a little depressed by the fact that acknowledging that everyone has the right to be who they want to be and live their life how they want to live it, as long as they're not hurting anyone else, should merit any kind of special award or special mention, because it's common sense, isn't it? It is human decency. We shouldn't live in a world where that is worth remarking on. However, until we wake up and Kemi Badenoch doesn't exist anymore, I don't wish ill of her, I just wish her to shut up. Whilst we do live in this world, I am honored to receive this. I'm thrilled to be here and to be a part of this night. Pride is very important in our house. It's a family affair. We have skin in the game. So this event tonight thrills me. It gives me hope. It gives me fire. It gives me energy and deep joy. And even if I feel I don't really deserve this, I'm very pleased and very proud to be receiving it. Thank you all so much.
Skin in the game. What does he mean?
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah. So this is just to explain to the viewers. That's David Tennant, who played the most popular Doctor, arguably, since Tom Baker. And then he came back for this new series and completely demolished 5 years of hard work in a couple of hours. It was shocking what he did. In that speech, he referenced Kemi Badenoch, who's a black British MP, and he basically said, I want to be in a world where she doesn't exist. Now, he's completely hook, line, and sinker bought into this nonsense. And I think 10 years ago, if I'd heard that speech, I'd have agreed with him to quite a large degree. But now, how is he not seeing that this is a massive agenda and that it's actually hurting people, rather than it's like he's been living in some sort of bubble, or he's being programmed by his wife, who's Georgia Moffat. Now, Georgia Moffat is the daughter of the fifth Doctor.
Yep.
Peter Davison. And she appeared in The Doctor's Daughter with David Tennant about 15 years ago as well, which was actually a good episode. But it sounds like he's being brainwashed by his wife, by the way he put that. What do you think? So Tennant's thing, because it's been quite controversial. He's been thrown into an argument, I think, with J.K. Rowling, who's been speaking out against this transgender nonsense, and he's there defending it. I think, haven't they got a baby that they call they as well? Did I read that somewhere?
Yeah, that is a thing.
This is terrifying because he's so popular and he was such a good Doctor that this is working on children. This is what bothers me. This is dangerous what he's doing.
Well, and I think the caveat that I always put into this, because they'll roast me alive if they don't. So it's one of these things that whenever this comes up, I'm very much a live and let live person.
Same here.
I'm like, you do whatever you want, whoever you want, whatever. I don't care. As long as you don't expect special treatment, and as long as you don't negatively impact or these days terrorize regular people, and I will add, don't take things that aren't yours and destroy them. So what he's arguing for is, in principle, I agree with it, but in fact, that's not what he's arguing for. This is no longer a quest to just be acceptance is indifference. And they don't want indifference. They want dominance. And that's the problem. Also, I'll add to that. I was going to say don't mess with other people's kids, but I find it very odd that so many celebrities have children that fit into this category, which should be like 0.003% of the population. And 10 years ago, I would have been right on board with this, because I think 10 years ago it meant something completely different.
Yeah.
And with and to put in context with Russell T Davies, he is a gay man, as he reminds everybody at every opportunity. He's 60, so he is of an age where society was completely different. Say he would have been 20 in 1984. I was much, much younger, but I was around in 1984. Society was very different back then. There were major obstacles to overcome. I would say by the 2000s, aside from a few outliers that aren't representative of most of society, it became a non-issue for most of us. I'm like, I don't care what you do, just, don't be a dick. And I think the issues had largely been resolved. And I think Russell seems to think that the situation that society was in back in 1984 is still the situation in 2024. But I also think it's arrogance on his part. Like you can see interviews of Russell T Davies back in 2005 and compare them to right now. Even in pictures, it's not the same person. He used to be this optimistic person who seemed to have a love for the show, had so much excitement for it. Now you have this person who's talking down to fans. He's attacked fans on Twitter and well, I don't think he's on Twitter, but on Instagram. He's been awful to fans, just questioning, could you leave the politics out, please, and just give us a story? And no, I'm like, there's one friend of mine, I won't mention him by name, but he's in his early 20s, loves Doctor Who, grew up with RTD, and just made on Instagram a response to Russell. I'm like, and it was perfectly reasonable request. Could you leave the politics aside and let's just focus on the science fiction? Russell just attacked this kid. It actually destroyed him. Like, this was his favorite show. This was his hero. Russell in 2024 is not a nice person. David Tennant is not the same person he was back in 2006. He used to be this optimistic person. I think even when you watched him play the Doctor again, he played it differently. He's now, and the people who represent fandom, represent the show would be, Russell T Davies and David Tennant, who's used to be considered the best producer and the best Doctor. It's vile. And David Tennant is just as bad as Russell. Again, it's a completely different person 20 years ago. And you can't, I've given up trying to reason with these people. And there was one point, I think around 2018, I put the caveat in every video I released. Eventually I just gave up because they're just going to twist your words around anyway. Doctor Who, Star Wars, these were not your franchises. Doctor Who or Star Wars goes back to 1977. Doctor Who goes back to 1963. Amongst the fans, and this is a legitimate complaint, this was not, neither of these franchises were yours to turn into something completely different. Yes, Russell, you did bring it back in 2005. Yes, David Tennant, you did become the most popular Doctor at the end of 2005, although I think Tom Baker is still probably the most popular. Well, he is now, because Tennant's completely
well, he's always been
legacy.
my favorite. Yeah.
But it's this wasn't your franchise, and he And he's been blatant. It's like, this is now an LGBT insert of however many letters now show. I'm like, no, Russell, it isn't. It's a science fiction show. And there's the other argument. Well, Doctor Who has always been political. Peter Davison actually was in an article recently. It never announced it was political. That's one thing. Also, Doctor Who and Star Trek used to excel at this, where they would talk about current issues. They'd work them into science fiction, but often it was vague.
You had the first interracial kiss on TV on Star Trek.
Yep, Plato's stepchildren.
Doctor Who was incredibly good with some of the writers, some of which I met, that would slip in all sorts of great allegories about the state of Britain. But what was interesting about, because I just want to, I'm sorry to butt in, but
no,
it's a friend of mine, Toby, did a piece on Newsnight before this series came out on the BBC, where, and I know Toby was my friend for 30 odd years, and I love him to pieces, but I watched with my mouth ajar, because he was making that argument, saying that Doctor Who has this great history of standing up for the little guy and being political and blah, and it does. But the difference, I think, that he missed, sorry, Toby, but the thing that he missed was that back then the writers were going up against and hiding that stuff from the BBC, whereas now it seems that it's being pushed by the BBC through the writers onto the public as an agenda. And there's a big difference in that, isn't there?
Exactly. And the whole purpose of entertainment, why we like Doctor Who, why we like Star Trek. I was 5 years old when I became, actually my earliest memory is a Doctor Who episode of the Daleks, Destiny of the Daleks, when it first aired in Canada.
War, yeah. I remember that.
But it's the whole idea of entertainment is escapism. That's why we love Star Trek. That's why we love Star Wars, Doctor Who, Marvel. You list basically every franchise aside from Babylon 5 and Back to the Future that has been completely destroyed. It's escapism. You could do the occasional episode. I remember Deep Space Nine. I did a brilliant episode around 2000 or 1998. Where Cisco goes back in time. They tackle racism head on, and occasionally they cover something head on, but that wasn't the main purpose. The main purpose was to entertain. Doctor Who, technically, it was originally supposed to be an educational program. They threw that out by the 5th episode, because we have 5 episodes in. We've got the introduction of the Daleks, so that originally didn't last very long at all. Eventually they turfed historicals altogether because the ratings were typically terrible. But this is supposed to be what it is. I don't tune into Doctor Who to watch a lecture about whatever the current topic is. I don't tune into Star Wars I haven't watched The Acolyte. I've just watched the reviews of it. But who tunes into this? Is not fun. You watch the news, you watch your programs. I don't tune into Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who to be lectured to. And the quality across the board is awful. It's when the politics in Doctor Who was first injected, or at least it was taken up 15 notches in Capaldi's second season, the quality of the show dropped. Like, his last 2 seasons were terrible. When you take out a talented actor, you put Whittaker in there, it becomes unwatchable. I find it hard to believe that what I just watched is the same team that gave us 2005 through January 2010. I'm like, the stories are terrible. The Sutek plot line is possibly dumber than the Timeless Children. I'm like, so you're telling me that he's been trailing the TARDIS since 1975 in Pyramids of Mars, and all you needed to take him out was a lasso. His big story arc of I call her Princess Zumi's parents was nothing, and apparently he ripped off Star Wars. The Jodie Whittaker is a more believable doctor than Nudie Gatwa, or Shooty Gatwa, or Dr. Nutty as I call him. It's badly cast across the board. The only time that the dialogue didn't sound like it was written by a 5-year-old was the one episode Stephen Moffat wrote, although it's now Moffat's worst episode. Moffat was always the better writer of the two of them. Well, yeah, it's how did this happen? Well, you let it happen. Like these weren't your franchises; they're dead now. Doctor Who is the most dead franchise, and it's because of just the vile hatred of the people that made this show what it was. I'm like, what those people that started watching Doctor Who in, say, in 1963 or in the 1980s, like I did, or when it came back, or even during Matt Smith, which is when it exploded in the United States. The powers that be have nothing but hatred for these people. And he's made it clear you're not welcome. He only wants Doctor Who fans under 35. So let's just do the math here. So 35 years ago was 1989. 1989 was the end of the classic series. So literally to have grown up or even existed when the classic series was on, you had to have been born before 1989. So literally it's like, okay, 1989, we don't want you people anymore. It's like, I don't know if you even realized it, but mathematically it lines up with the end of Classic Who. You're not welcome anymore. You are not our audience. Go away.
And of course, the brilliance from their perspective is that if you question anything, like if you question any of the official narratives from governments in the last 10 years, you are immediately branded sexist, racist, and homophobic.
Yep.
Which is nonsense, because one of the things I loved about the Doctor Who was always famous for having quite a gay audience, and we all knew, and it was fine because we all got on. Who cares? Who cares?
It was a completely different environment. I remember that too, and it's a lot of people that I used to talk to on the forums and stuff like that. Like it's it did have a strong gay element to it, and we didn't care. It almost never came in. I remember Gallifrey or Outpost Gallifrey had this one little forum called the Leisure Hive, which is where all the naughty stuff came out. So that's where they'd have that. But when it came to it, I'm like, even one of my when I do live streams, one of my regular co-hosts, he's gay. I'm like, we don't care. It was part of the show.
Yeah.
And most of those people, they hate it as much as we do. I'm like, they hate it even more because you're pandering to me. We don't want to be pandered to. And
exactly.
So it's gone from being a non-issue to something that completely took over the show. And also those, the gay men and women who were fans of the show, they've been thrown aside along with the rest of us. They're not welcome either. It's like you have to adopt the 2024 agenda, and like as in that speech, Tennant attacked a black woman. These people are just downright hostile to just regular gay men and women. They've actually, from this fandom, I think they've gotten it the worst. If you see what's going on, like they've been just horrific to them. I think society in general. So it's like, they hate them. They hate anybody who isn't exactly like them. And most of these young people that will adopt it, and it seems to be a minority, but it's more or less, they want to fit in. They don't even necessarily understand what they're supporting. And I have to, when David, I can't remember her name, but when David Tennant attacked that woman, I'm like, did that even occur to you for a second? Or are you just so wrapped up in this ideology and people are watching this? And it's like get over yourself, dude. So much of this is ego. And they've decided on this one issue to focus on. And I think there are more serious things going on right now. Because the whole world economy is possibly 6 months from imploding. We're very close to World War III, and you people are focused on this.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to show you another picture, and I'm going to ask you a question about this because this is the statue outside of the BBC. Right, this is a paedophilic statue made by a paedophile called Eric Gill. I think it was put up in 1926. This is an artist that raped his own dog. I mean, the guy was horrific. And the BBC not only refused to take it down.
What the hell?
Oh, you didn't know this?
Somehow this has gotten past me. I've never seen this before, but that is disgusting.
Oh, it is. It is. This is why I put it up, because
that should get you thrown in jail.
Well, yeah. Oh, well, you see, during the last 4 years, there were a group of great protesters in London. One guy actually got up there and started trying to chip it away. I think that's it there. Maybe he tried to take it down. But now they're repairing it. So they're doubling down on that as well. And they're putting it right in the faces. So I'm, because I've been trying to wrap my head around why you would take something so popular, so beloved by children and families worldwide, and just utterly destroy it. And why you would take somebody like Russell, who I believed was a big fan, and as you said, he's not the same person. And it's the same with David Tennant. It's not the same person. I'm actually wondering if that's actually literally not the same people, because I can't think of anything else that makes sense. And it's like with the BBC doubling down on that paedophile stuff, they're also well known for being, hiding Jimmy Savile for 50 years, the biggest paedophile in history, connected to the royal family and all of this that we're going through right now. I think it's all connected. And I'm wondering, there's because I'm an optimist, I'm just going to throw this at you, see what you think. Because I'm an optimist, I wonder if there's a spiritual aspect to all of this, where we've had to let go of our heroes and even fictional ones in order to grow ourselves. And maybe these guys are playing roles at the moment because they've to destroy culture the way they've done. Has that been an essential thing for spiritual growth? That's on one hand. On the other hand, have they literally been taken over by demons? Or I don't know if you've ever heard of the Vril, VRIL. Hitler was them. And they are acting like people that have had their souls taken over by. So it's like a Doctor Who script. The underground lizards came and took them over. Like the Slitheen, maybe. It is actually like a Doctor Who script, watching what's playing out. What do you think? So I was going to mention the Tavistock Institute as well, because when you talked about sitcoms earlier, over the last 4 years, I've gone back to some of my favorite sitcoms, and then it hit me. Oh my God, this is all social engineering. If you go and look at Catherine Tate's sketch show from 10 years ago, whenever it was, Nan and all of that, it was all social engineering. You go back to the Harry Enfield sketch show in the 80s, it was all social engineering. And then it hit me, oh my God, has this been social engineering since day one? Because if you think about Doctor Who, it's one of the biggest limited hangouts of all time. You've got hundreds of millions of fans worldwide, and then suddenly you hit them with this, and they're either brokenhearted and run away, or they start getting their brains melded and turning into what David Tennant's turned into. What do you think? Do you think there's a bigger agenda at foot here, and is it a good one or a bad one? And because we've talked for nearly an hour, I'll shut up for a minute and just see if you've got anything optimistic or positive to say at the end of this interview.
I do believe in spiritualism. It's not something that I go on about much, but I do believe in it. I do believe that there have been at various times in history, I think, demonic forces. I think that's a real thing.
Yeah. And
what we've seen, and most of us are just watching this as observers. You look at Sam, what's his face, the guy, the singer guy that dresses up like a devil is one of the best examples. I can't remember his last name.
He did the Bond song, Sam Smith.
Yeah, that's it, Sam Smith.
Yeah,
there does seem to be. Yeah, it's.
He was all right a few years ago. He was okay.
Oh yeah, I didn't know who he was, and I checked. I'm like, he was normal, and then this happened.
Yeah.
There is a demonic feel to a lot of this, and everybody has noticed this when you have, the use the term woke, whatever term you want to use, when you're watching one of these people go off in videos. You look at the eyes, and everybody has noticed this. The eyes are completely dead.
Yeah.
Or they look just psychotic. And I suppose if we looked at David Tennant and Russell T Davies in, say, 2006 versus now, the eyes are completely different. The eyes are just dead. So I wouldn't completely discount that. I believe in spiritualism. I believe that there's something beyond this realm. I'm not necessarily religious. And I think there are good forces and evil forces. And I think we've all had things in our life, just the oddest coincidences that just coincidence cannot on its own describe. There's something else looking out for us. And I think there are other forces out there that are looking to harm us. And this is definitely part of a larger agenda. And entertainment is just part of it. I think it's been going on since longer than 2015, although 2015 is when various things happened. We just look at the situation we were in 4 years ago, which has now been largely completely forgotten about and swept away. It's like that we spent 2 years in a void.
Not by me.
Yep. It's all I know is I was forced to take my shots, and I got very sick with all of them. So I will put that out there.
Sorry to hear that.
And we were given no choice. It was either you take the shots or your life is destroyed.
Well, I've opened the healing center and I've gathered a lot of knowledge over the last 4 years. Might be able to help you off screen with that if you want any. You're always welcome.
Okay, yeah, it's we had a decision: live on the street or do this. But I think if you look at politics, you look at the World Economic Forum. That's where a lot of this is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Why are rich people building bomb shelters? Why is Bill Gates buying up all that farmland? Why is especially my country importing people from other countries we're over 1 million a year now. I think it was like 1.2 something million last year. Very small country. Our cities have been completely overrun. You can't buy housing. We're very close to a food shortage, and I'm not exaggerating. I went to Walmart to do my grocery shopping yesterday. It's half empty. That's the situation everywhere. We can't afford food. In Canada, our mortgages adjust every 5 years with current interest rates. The housing market is going to completely implode in my country next year, when the people were buying inflated mortgages at very low interest rates at average 2%. Those are going to flip over. I think the average is about 7%. It's you have all these things together, and entertainment is a very small part of it, but it's, if you want to condition the young, this is the best way to do it. Although I think there is hope, because not all of the Zoomers have been, even though I make fun of them in my videos just because it's funny, because some of them get so mad when I do it. But I think there are a lot of Zoomers that can see through this. Generation Alpha, they've had the worst. Their development was completely interrupted, and we all have kids of these age in our lives. I've got my nephews, except they are now starting to see, the older ones who are now teenagers are starting to see through a lot of this crap.
That's good.
So I think there is hope, but no, you'd have to be an idiot. I'm like, it's Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually your answer, or however, whatever the exact quote goes. There's just, especially in the past 10 years, there's been too many things happening that are questionable. There's the political situation in every country is a disaster. I'm like, the United Kingdom made the decision it made, which is mind-boggling. My country made the decision it made. I'm in Canada, for anybody that doesn't know. I think we said that at the beginning. My country has elected the same individual 3 times, although he's now the most hated politician in the history of our country, because at the ground level, people are seeing it. Regular people could see, oh, my mortgage is going to turn over. I'm going to lose my house. Oh, my neighborhood, which 10 years ago was nice, has turned into a crime-infested hellhole, because not only have they imported, and it's not a race thing, it's just we don't have the infrastructure to handle these people.
Yeah, but you're racist for even suggesting it.
Yep. It's like the city that I live in, our population has been pretty much flat for decades. In the past 3 years, it's gone up by 10%. There are no more doctors. We've actually lost doctors. Though I had to go get a prescription renewed a few months ago. It ended up as a 10-hour ordeal, because newcomers, as we call them, had taken up. They're taking advantage of the free healthcare. They're going into our clinics, and it's one of them sneezed, so all 10 of them have to go through. Our grocery stores have been pillaged. Crime, not necessarily from that, but at the same time, there's been in my country especially, there's been a decriminalization of everything. We have a drug epidemic. When I was a kid, and I moved away, but I'm back in the city I grew up in, we didn't see We didn't see homeless people. They just didn't exist. We didn't see people participating in, shall we say, drug activities in the wide open. It's unbelievable. Downtown is, you don't want to go downtown. You're going to get stabbed. People will get attacked down there. People walking around like zombies. I have to watch when I take my dog out because we have needles everywhere because it's been enabled. There was a safe injection site in my neighborhood, which multiplied the problems by a factor of 5 because it sent a message that these things are okay. But if you're looking for some optimism, now you can't ignore it. Now regular people are seeing, people that were non-political or people that were on the other side, people that 10 years ago were calling me names because I warned them, Justin isn't all you think. I didn't think it was going to be this bad, but they're now seeing it. You can't go into the grocery store and not be able to get food, or you're paying $6 for a loaf of bread. And yes, that is a thing. You can't drive around your neighborhoods and just see needles everywhere. You look at the crime rate, you see the complete absence of police because they're policing things that aren't important and just letting very bad people do very bad things. And the fact that our entire country, like Trudeau, is now hated because a lot of this was done, especially importing people, was done based on his ego, and he's doubled down on it because he refuses to admit he's wrong. The hatred of our PM is now visceral. So I think it is a positive. I think people are seeing through this, and they can't go on. Now, unfortunately, the UK, it is what it is. In the US, you've got a individual who's had dementia since before he was elected 4 years ago, running your country. They hate Donald Trump because he's a wild card in all this, just based on his personality. He made his money on his own. He will not kowtow to these people, which is why he is so hated. I think we may have him. Canada, we might have, right now we may have a conservative government under Pierre Poilievre. When our next election turns around, or when we have our next election next year, although he's not going to solve all the issues, and there's some issues he's not discussing, but you can't deny it. They can't claim that these things aren't happening. And the entertainment industry, it's going to collapse. It can't come soon enough. Check out independent film, check out independent TV shows, check out YouTubers. There's so many other options. Just don't give them your money.
Yeah.
So that was a bit rambling and all over the place.
No, that was great. It was great to hear that from you, because it's a real insight into Canada, but it's great. I knew that talking to a fellow Doctor Who fan would end up with an optimistic outlook on it, because we're naturally like that. I think that's what was so great about. That's what those shows are all about. It was like this wonderful future that we're going into that we've had robbed from us. But I am a little bit of a social commentator myself, and I'd like to share something with you that I think should raise a laugh, which your illustrious leader features in this poem I did a couple of years ago. Would you like to see it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to show you this just to see if I can tickle you. Here we go. Oh, advert. Sorry. I didn't know they played adverts on BitChute. That's annoying.
Wait, do they?
There are many things you can say about this pandemic. But when it comes to the people involved in the attempted mass genocide of the human race, there is but one word that sums them up perfectly. And that word is cunts! 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 Super cunts! With his child trafficking dad cunts! Cunts! Dead cunts! Not dead cunts! 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 Hitler cunts! Smug cunts! Cunts! Mutt cunts! Cunts! Dead cunts! Castro cunts. Cunts. Fuck off, you cunts. Mega cunts. Dead cunt that started all this. Did I miss anyone?
I hope I wasn't laughing too loud in the background, but yeah, that's okay. So you want to know who's those are the people doing very bad things. That's all. Well, no, there's a lot more, but those are the
There
ones
are,
that
yeah.
you know.
I mean, you could go on for hours with all the people doing very bad things. I should have put Russell T Davis in there.
Is he a member of the forum?
I think he must be. I don't know.
I know the UK's new PM is.
Oh yeah, of course. I personally think they've all been replaced and they're all playing a part, but that's because I'm an apocalypse optimist. But I'll send you a copy of my book for free if you want. This has got a lot of these in covers that should keep you amused for a few hours in the evening.
Awesome.
And I just want to thank you for that really lovely chat and lots of very interesting things there. You're doing a great job, and it's a real pleasure to meet you. And come on anytime you want, and keep up the good work.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mark. It's been awesome to be here. And for anybody that was expecting me to yell, if I yelled through an hour-long live stream, it would end with me dropping dead. So yeah, it's more of calm Bowlestrek when I do interviews and live streams. So this is like my sexy radio voice.
It's good.
But yes, we must do this again. And actually, at some point I'm going to start doing regular live streams on my channel again for the first time in like 5 years. So I must have you on. Well,
you know, I said it at the beginning. It's a really important work. All you guys, I forgot to mention Heelvsbabyface. There's loads of amazing. I'm talking to the audience here, go and watch them. They're funnier than the shows that they're reviewing, and it's just brilliant to watch. And
I know all of them personally. Actually, I was the one that introduced Az and Gary. But yeah, they're all genuine. They're all awesome. Yeah. And Disparu is replacing Az on Friday Night Tights. Definitely worth checking out if you've never seen those. Az just had to step down after 4 years because the time zone was kind of killing him. But no, I know all these, I guess to use the UK term, I know all these blokes. Yeah. They are genuine. They're all good people. They all care about entertainment. They all came up as nerds first. They actually care about this stuff. Now, a lot of us were just making fun of it because there's not much else you can do anymore. But yeah, don't give these corporations your money. There are so many YouTubers out there doing your work. They're doing awesome work. Don't give Disney money for the Acolyte. Just watch Disparu because his reviews are awesome. And actually, he's the only one. I've never actually met him or talked to him. He's one of the only ones, and oddly enough, he's one of my favorite YouTubers. But yeah.
Well, everybody you just mentioned, the people that I go to, apart from when I'm looking at car videos, because that's my other thing. But that's how I chill out. And every time I sit there with the flicker going, oh, there's nothing on any of these channels, I go back to you guys. So it's a real privilege to have you on the show. And thank you very much. And thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you soon.